In a new interview with the BBC, Prince Harry opened up about the legal security challenges that are preventing him from reconciling with his estranged dad, King Charles. So is making that on-camera plea gonna help chances? You think, don't think he's making it into a public spectacle? What are your thoughts?
I was conflicted over this because, so I think all of us agree you always want reconciliation. We had Jeremy Renner here last week, who basically, I mean, he had a near death. He actually says he died briefly in this snowmobile accident. And he said at the end, all that you remember is the people you loved. Not money, not titles, not crown jewels. So I think everyone roots for there to be reconciliation. Watching this, I kind of felt like it was a Hail Mary. Like he's probably made outreach, not heard back. I can't speak to why he hasn't heard back or whatever, but I think that he must have thought, if I go out there on the BBC, perhaps that's a way to signal to my father, you know, in this period that you have left, I do want to talk and reopen those lines of communication. And I root for it. I think that he acted in the interest of his family in the immediate, not thinking he was giving up the rest of his family for the rest of his life.
Yeah, you know, this issue came out of a legal case because in 2020, he was denied security protection. The type of security protection someone in the born into the royal family requires, because we know what that kind of thing is. There's a lot of exposure, not only for him, but for the Duchess, Meghan, his wife, and his 2 children. And he wants to go and show them his home country. And so that was stripped away from him because he decided that he didn't want the official duties. And a point that he made during that interview, which I thought was striking, is that there are people that serve their country, but then leave public service, but always have that protection for the rest of their lives because they're different. This is a man who was born into a family, born into that duty, spent tours in Afghanistan and served his country for 35 years. I think that does warrant the security. That being said, another thing that he said was while he wants reconciliation, he learned from Canada that there cannot be reconciliation without truth. It's truth and reconciliation. So yes, he wrote the book. Yes, he told his side of the story. We haven't heard from the other side, but I don't think he should be punished for telling his truth because I do really believe there is no reconciliation without that.
Okay, so this struck me pretty hard. You all, 3 of you have met my father. You know how incredibly close I have been with him.
He's so cute.
My entire life. It's been, you know, he's my touchstone. I've had him on a pedestal my entire life. And I think there's a lot of families. I'm going through this. I think there's a lot of families that might not be princes, may not be kings, that are going through very painful family estrangement where there's these 2 sides that are at an impasse. And it is very, very hard because sometimes there's so many layers of things that have happened, of history, of lies, of pain, of hurt to get over. My father's 85 years old. And so when you have that tick-tock in your head, right, telling you, reminding you, his father has cancer, mine is 85 years old. We can all go at any moment. But when you're talking about an 85-year-old or somebody with serious cancer, you know that's even more present in your mind. It is very damn hard. And I think it takes a lot of processing and a lot of humility. It also takes both sides. I don't think it's something that can be done unilaterally. So as somebody that's going through it and hopes to be able to work it out, I really hope that they get the chance to reconcile, because my biggest fear is not reconciling with my father and then having regrets my entire life. And so I'm sure that's something that he's wrestling with as well, and so many in America. But girl, it's gonna take some liquor and some intercession from Pope Francis now that he's up there.
Well, reconciliation takes 2 people, but forgiveness takes 1. And I think for some of the closure he's seeking, he's not promised a reconciliation. None of us are. But I look at how he broke so much with the royal family because, as Sunny, you alluded to, it was important for he and Meghan to have say in what people knew about their story, which was important. But I do think now, looking at it from a royal family, which is not relatable for me, but you don't break with, as Meghan called it, the firm. And they came out and they did a sit down with Oprah. They did a book. They did a documentary. I think the levels in which a royal family who's all about pent-up tight secrets, which I'm not saying is the right way to do it, but I think he hit, there were going to be consequences. And I think sadly this might be one of them, and my heart breaks because we also don't know how much contact he has. The king's health is probably high security knowledge that not everyone gets because that's a risk for them. And now you're talking to the son who did the sit down, who did the book, who did the documentary. So as much as he means well, and you can see as his throat tightens and he feels so many things, I believe him. I don't know if we're ever guaranteed that closure or reconciliation, and that makes my heart heavy.
And it's also sad that his mother, right, Diana, Princess Diana, worked so hard in the relationship of those two brothers. So in all likelihood, I suspect they are estranged as well. Yeah. And I can tell you, I miss my father, and I'm sure he misses me. But it is just very difficult to take that first step, and I think it takes a lot of processing. This is something you and I have spoken about a lot because you're on the other side of it, having lost your mother, having lost your brother, and knowing that sometimes you don't get a second chance.
Yeah, and sorry, real quickly, we see how quickly people can pass. We had a friend here at the show who lost their father suddenly and surprising.
Yes.
And as hard as it is to take the first step or say the first word, to have that chance ripped from you probably hurts more.
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember, this is what he wants. This is what he needs. And that's what he's putting out there. I don't know what Charles needs. Right. I don't know what Charles wants to do. Maybe Charles feels he said everything he needs to say. And if that is the case, he's going to have to deal with it. It's, you can't decide for somebody else what they're going to do. You can only be accountable for your own actions. So, I always say whatever you need to say while people are breathing and walking around and are mad at you today. Say what you need to say. Because, that's when you need to tell people that you love them, when they're really pissed at you. Because that's when stuff happens and you're not ready for it. So you always have to, you can't leave these things unsaid. When you leave stuff unsaid and people disappear, there's nothing you can do. It's done. Don't leave it unsaid, y'all. We'll be right back.
Squaddies, I need you to sit down for this one. Prince Harry just said the quiet part out loud, on camera, to the BBC. He connected two things the tabloid machine has spent years paying good money to keep separate: the stripping of his security and the silence from his own father. He said it plainly. Charles won't engage with him while the security legal fight is ongoing. And with the King's cancer diagnosis hanging over everything, Harry doesn't know how much time he has left to fix it. Let that sit for a second. This isn't a man chasing headlines. This is a son doing the math on his father's mortality, in public, because private channels have failed him. And before the rota gets to spin this into Harry attacks family again, we're going to break down what actually happened, why the reaction from outside the UK bubble has been so different from the reaction inside it, and why the burden of proof keeps landing on exactly the wrong person. Let's Steelman the other side first, because we always do. The argument goes something like this. Harry stepped back from royal duties, so he gave up the perks that came with the job, including taxpayer-funded protection. He made his bed. He should stop complaining and let his family heal in private, without the interviews, without the books, without the cameras. I understand why that argument is emotionally satisfying to some people. It sounds like accountability. It sounds like maturity. It's also completely wrong once you look at how security threat assessment is actually supposed to work. Security protection tied to threat level is not supposed to be a reward for institutional loyalty. It's supposed to be tied to actual, assessed, real-world risk. Harry didn't stop being the son of the king the day he chose a different life for his family. He didn't stop being a target for the exact same hostile actors who forced his mother's car into that tunnel in Paris. If anything, the global visibility that came with him and Meghan stepping back arguably made them a bigger target, not a smaller one. Removing that protection wasn't some neutral bureaucratic footnote. It was a decision made by a specific committee, RAVEC, that chose to treat institutional distance as grounds for reduced safety. That's not how protection works for anyone else who has served this country. People who've served in other capacities routinely keep lifetime protection because the threat against them doesn't expire the moment they change jobs. Harry didn't just serve. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was born into this. And the moment he asked for the same basic safety afforded to people who've done far less, he was told no. That's the part the "he brought this on himself" crowd conveniently skips. Here's what really gets me, Squaddies. Every single time Harry speaks, whether it's a book, an interview, or a legal filing, the narrative machine flips it into a story about what he's doing wrong. Airing dirty laundry, going public, being disloyal. Almost never do we get honest reporting on what the institution around Charles has or hasn't done to meet him halfway. There's no reconciliation without truth. Harry wrote the book. He told his side on the record at real personal cost. We still haven't heard the other side. Not really, not honestly. And somehow Harry is the one being asked to do all the reconciling. That's not balance. That's a double standard, wearing a suit and tie. I want to spend real time on something the UK press barely touches. Prince William's continued sustained silence through all of this. Silence, especially from someone in his position, is not a neutral act. It's a choice with consequences. William has had every opportunity, multiple points over several years, to say something, anything, that acknowledges his brother's pain. Even the smallest olive branch. He hasn't. What we've gotten instead is carefully managed public silence, broken only by the occasional friendly wave at an engagement, while stories favourable to his office continue to leak to friendly outlets. That silence does real work for him. It lets William avoid ever being on record taking a position, while the press narrative keeps softening around him and hardening around Harry. If William truly wanted reconciliation, the tools are entirely within his control. A private message, a public statement of goodwill, or simply how his office handles Sussex-related stories in the press. Choosing not to use any of them is itself a choice. This isn't 2 brothers who just drifted apart. One brother has been writing, speaking, and repeatedly saying on the record that he wants to fix this. The other has said nothing at all. That imbalance matters, and the rota needs to stop pretending it doesn't. We can't talk about any of this without talking about Diana. She spent her life trying to give her sons something that felt human instead of institutional. Swimming trips, theme parks, the freedom to just be boys instead of royal assets. She fought the very machine both of her sons eventually had to navigate without her. And now here's Harry, essentially asking for the kind of warmth and reconciliation Diana spent her life trying to protect. There's something almost unbearable about that image. A son invoking his mother's memory, even indirectly, while pleading for his surviving parent to simply pick up the phone. If Diana were here, does anyone honestly believe she'd let a security dispute keep her son from his father while the clock is running? I don't believe that for 1 second. And I don't think you do either. Harry has made his position public, repeatedly, clearly, and at real emotional cost to himself. He's named the injustice in the security ruling. He's made an open plea for reconciliation while there's still time left to make it matter. He said his piece. He extended the hand. What happens next isn't on him anymore. So, Squaddies, here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Charles responds to this before it's too late? And William's silence? Is that self-protection, institutional loyalty, or something else entirely? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If this video hit different for you, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this side of the story instead of the rota's version. And make sure you're subscribed with the bell on, because we've got more receipts coming.